governance, including the media, particularly nung may tayo yung National Democratic Front noong 1973. So itong mga naglalabasang issue na to, personally, it's my view that it is a tribute to the success of the Communist Party in penetrating even the halls of the United Nations. Kaya may mga ganitong issues, no, na lumalabas sa ating bansa. But again, we are confident na naipakita natin on how transparent and open ang ating gobyerno in welcoming all these visitors to our country and showing to them what we have been doing all along with respect to our treaty obligations related to press freedom and freedom of opinion. Andiyan na sila? Okay, good. Oh.
The basis of the questions that you will raise, if that's all right, yeah? Okay. All right. Good morning, good Friday to everyone, and welcome to the DFA's press conference on the visit of the UN Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Opinion and Expression, Ms. Irene Khan. We are joined by distinguished officials from PTFOMS, PHRCS, DOJ, PCO, and DFA. I will enumerate their names later on. Some 10 days ago, UN Special Rapporteur Khan commenced her country visit to the Philippines upon the invitation of the Philippine government. She is the third Special Rapporteur to pay a courtesy country visit to the Philippines in 14 months. The visit allowed Ms. Khan the opportunity to meet, dialogue, and engage with different offices and officials in the three branches of our government, the legislative, the executive, and the judicial branch of our government, as well as local government officials in Baguio, Tacloban, and Cebu, and also a broad discussion with media representatives and civil society. Her visit reaffirms the government's commitment to the protection and promotion of human rights, and it also gave the unique opportunity for her to actually see our democracy in practice, as well as the robust media landscape that we have. Today, we're actually pleased to have the statement of the government on the visit of the UN Special Rapporteur. Allow me to turn the floor to Undersecretary Paul Gutierrez of the Presidential Task Force on Media Security. USEC Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good morning again, my colleagues in the media industry. Here is the joint statement on the executive briefer of the UNSR on freedom of opinion and expression. Today marks the culmination of the United Nations Special Rapporteur Irene Khan's intensive 10-day engagement. The UNSR engaged with 24 government agencies, met with over 10 members of the House of Representatives and 7 members of the Supreme Court. Through meaningful dialogues and engagements with government bodies, media, civil societies, and other stakeholders, the UNSR had the opportunity to witness firsthand the openness and transparency of the Philippine government. This is crucial in understanding the nuances of our national context and appreciating our multi-pronged efforts in promoting and safeguarding freedom of opinion and expression. The UNSR's initial report offered suggestions to enhance programs and mechanisms safeguarding human rights with a focus on freedom of expression. These suggestions will be thoroughly evaluated and considered for implementation, serving as a foundation for transformative measures. While the government is open to reforms, it points out the difficulties in fully grasping the local nuances within a brief 10-day visit. Hence, further discussions and collaborative efforts between the government and the UNSR are planned. During the exit conference, the UNSR commended the resilience and dynamism of the nation's civil society organizations, praising the Presidential Task Force on Media Security for its backing and various government entities for their detailed briefings and invaluable insights. She highlighted several positive developments such as the renewal of peace negotiations, the release of Senator Laila de Lima and Ms. Maria Reza, the dismissal of most of the cases against Ms. Reza, and the active participation of a robust civil society. The government pledges to improve inclusivity by involving civil society organizations in its initiatives and recognizing the importance of strengthening media freedom and security while allocating the necessary resources. Additionally, the UNSR has been invited to the forthcoming Freedom of Opinion and Expression Stakeholders Engagement in mid-2024. Ultimately, the government reaffirms its dedication to balancing the rights to association expression with the fundamental right to life, highlighting the challenges of navigating security and freedom with sensitivity and complexity. Thank you.
Thank you, Yusek Gutierrez. Joining Yusek Gutierrez in the panel are Undersecretary Severo Catura from the Philippine Human Rights Committee Secretariat, Undersecretary Raul Vasquez of the Department of Justice, Assistant Secretary Maria Teresa Almojela from our Department of Foreign Affairs, and Assistant Director General Jonathan Malaya from the National Task Force to End Local Communist Armed Conflict. The floor now is open for your questions. In the interest of time and order, please go direct to your question and just one short follow-up. Who'll raise the first question? Cecile from AFP.
Yusek, did Ms. Khan ask the Philippine government to abolish the NTF-ELCAC? And what was the response?
I leave the chance to answer to ADG Malaya.
So just to clarify, she made a statement right now. Did she make a statement right now calling for the? I'm sure that the presser, her own presser, has started. Okay. Well, there were some discussions about red tagging and about the status of the National Task Force ELCAC, and we relayed to her that number one, the government does not have a policy on red tagging. We do not condone or encourage red tagging, and in fact, there is no government order, policy issuance, or law that makes red tagging a policy of government. So we relayed this to her, and we said to her that there are legal remedies available for people who feel that they are aggrieved by red tagging. We relayed to her that individuals who fear that they are being red tagged can file cases in court. They can go to court and file libel cases or oral defamation cases, or can file cases with the ombudsman if these are public servants or public officers. No? Cases can also be filed in the Civil Service Commission, and as well as administrative cases with their respective government agencies. So we assured her that legal remedies are in place and that the government does not condone red tagging. As to the issue of the National Task Force ELCAC, she also raised that issue with us. She said that she is concerned about the National Task Force ELCAC, and we relayed to her assurances that the National Task Force ELCAC, as an organization, does not engage in red tagging. No? As I said, there is no policy. And given the current situation in the fight against local communist armed conflict, that there are now just 11 guerrilla fronts, no, existing, and these guerrilla fronts are all weakened. And given that there are just around 1,500 armed regulars of the New People's Army, and the President has already declared strategic victory over them, and since we expect that the remaining guerrilla fronts will be dismantled before the end of the year, the NTF-ELCAC is ready to transition to its roadmap, which is peace and development. We told her that given the successes in the anti-insurgency campaign, the NTF-ELCAC's roadmap is to transition to a different body, which is the National Task Force on Unity, Peace, and Development. Okay, so we relayed that to her, and we hope that she understood the desire of government to end communist terrorism in the Philippines, and the willingness of government to transition the NTF-ELCAC into a body for unity, peace, and development.
Zen from ABS-CBN. Sorry.
Yes, thank you very much. Just to add very briefly to what Undersecretary Jonathan mentioned, let everyone remember or keep in mind that at this stage of the visit of the UN Special Rapporteur, even if she has already issued a statement today, there's a clear understanding amongst all parties involved that these are very preliminary in nature. You know? If at all, it is conveying what she has been given or provided on the ground, and there's still a need for us to further vet. In fact, she herself opened a channel for continuing dialogues and engagements to further clarify it. And there was also an agreement between her and the state that indeed the 10-day visit has so many limitations. And that's the reason why she herself said there's a need for a longer time to refine the report, because we also insisted that only a complete report would find value in the whole scheme of things. And that is how we intend to move forward. But then again, the concerns of with regards to that issue has been conveyed to her during that meeting, and we trust that it would also inform a major part of her recommendations.
Thank you, Yusek Katura. Are there other members of the distinguished panel who would like to add to the response? If not, then Cecile, do you have a follow-up? Or maybe Jen, you have a question? Yes.
I'm just interested in what AEG Malaya mentioned regarding the transition. Is there a timeline for that transition, and what would be the fundamental differences between the setup that we have now and that new task force?
Yes, the transition is prompted by two things. The first one is the strategic victory over the New People's Army, the CPP, NP, and DF. As I said, the government is winning this war, and we feel that we can achieve total victory before the end of the year. The 11 weekend guerrilla fronts are now ripe for the picking, and we hope, and since the armed conflict will be ended soon, the main reason for the NTF-ELCAC then becomes, then there is a need to transition to a new body, and that body, hopefully, we think body will be the National Task Force for Unity, Peace, and Development, meaning this body will take charge of continuing development projects in the areas that were impoverished and neglected primarily because of communist conflict. No? The ones in geographically isolated and depressed areas has to be continued to be taken care of by government so that insurgency does not recur again. Okay. The other thing that prompted the discussions on transition, which we relayed specifically to a Special Rapporteur Khan, is the peace talks. No? Government has signed the Oslo Joint Communique in Norway, and given that the exploratory peace talks in a new peace framework is being developed by both sides, that also prompted the possible transition to this new entity, which will be the successor of NTF-ELCAC. So as to the question of when we intend to do this, no, I think, and I'm just stating my personal opinion, not the opinion of the entire task force. Once the 11 remaining guerrilla fronts have been dismantled, then that will be the signal to transition to the National Task Force for Unity, Peace, and Development. The other thing, perhaps, is once a political settlement has been signed with the CPP, NPA, NDF, then that would require the transition of NTF LCAC to a body dedicated to unity, peace, and development.
Any member would like to add to that? None?
Yes, Malu.
Magandang umaga po. Sir Malu from Business Mirror, was there any mention or discussion about the congressional franchise to broadcast companies that are being given by the Philippine Congress to Philippine media, like what was denied to ABS-CBN a few years ago? And also, sige, yun muna.
That was just mentioned in passing, but it was not discussed thoroughly. And besides, as mentioned by Yusek Nonoy Katura, this is just the first step in a long process of finalization of the Special Rapporteur's report as a result of her visit. In fact, she graciously agreed that her draft will be given us, to the government, for comment and refinement, and we will be given an opportunity to vet the items or the matters discussed therein for the purpose of making it comprehensive, complete, and realistic. So that matter was not discussed at all, and there was no need actually to engage point by point on all the items that she mentioned as part of her report, because this is just a preliminary report as mentioned.
Thank you, Yusek Vasquez. Yes, follow up, Malu.
Yeah, I'm just wondering because 3,000 people were laid off because of that franchise. And anyway, so there's another economic issue that beset the Philippine media, which is economic. During her visit, CNN Philippines was closed down. It's primarily because social media has been eating the revenue pie from regular traditional media entities. And it also affects the economic condition of the Philippine media, and also most probably our provincial correspondents. You cannot find any more very reliable correspondents in the provinces who will later on report about corruption in the provinces, also during calamities, where they can turn to reliably, right? So was there any discussion on the impact of social media to the Philippine media industry? Thank you.
In her preliminary report, SR Khan mentioned that she was aware of the Media Welfare Bill currently in the House of Representatives. I think this was one of the key points of her engagement with at least 10 members of the House of Representatives. She did recognize the importance of this bill, but she also recommended that we have broader consultations that involve practitioners and even small media companies, which will, of course, whose views have to be considered in developing further this legislative initiative. And I think Yusek Paul can say more about the substance of this bill.
Well, thank you. As you know, we have been, even before I joined the task force, we have been at the National Press Club advocating this, the passage of the Media Welfare Act during the 18th Congress, and we have had a commitment from Senate Labor Committee Chair Jingo Estrada that they will try, the current Senate will try to pass it before the adjournment of the Congress in Senate by June. No? Now, what I do remember Ms. Khan also saying is over the issue of ownership. media ownership in the, the government may want to look at the ownership structure of most of the particularly the private media. No, I think I believe that this should be placed in the context of her concern, and of course of our concern about what happened to ABS-CBN, what happened to CNN. He wants us to also look into that aspect of media ownership.
Yusek, anyone who'd like to add to that? Okay, next question, please. Jen.
Thank you, ma'am. Good afternoon. Jen Galvez, Vanguard Radio Network. Just want to ask, sir, is there any reaction already from President Bongbong regarding the not just the statement that was just released by Miss Irene Khan, but also the trip of the representative? Thank you.
Well, what I can say is that, as I mentioned during our informal discussion earlier, Ms. Khan had a 1 hour long, frank, open, candid, but friendly discussion with our executive secretary yesterday in Malacanang, and our executive secretary affirmed to her not only the commitment of this administration in promoting and strengthening press freedom, in particular, but human rights in general, but also welcoming her gladly during her visit, which commenced from January 22. Yun lang yung pong narinig kong nila kahapon. But again, the executive secretary meeting with our visitor from the United Nations again shows a lot about how this government is giving value to our international visitors, particularly those coming from the United Nations.
Next question, please. Yes, is it Donna? Yes, Donna of PDI, yes?
Yes, ma'am. Good morning. I'm Donna Pasibugan of Philippine Daily Inquirer. Did Ms. Khan raise the matter of arrest or detention of any individuals, given that she, I believe, visited certain individuals in Tacloban? And what was the government's commitment, if any?
There was a mention about the status of cases involving media practitioners who are facing cases currently. And her statement was that justice delayed is justice denied. We have not directly addressed that point, except that the government of the Philippines is composed of 3 independent, co-equal independent departments. The judiciary acts on its own, and it is not interfered upon by the executive nor the legislative. In fact, as proof of its independence, the judiciary decided the matter of Senator De Lima and Maria Ressa and acted based on the evidence presented before them. That is an indication that the accountability mechanisms in our country are working, that the will of justice is operating, and that the judiciary is one that performs its task based on the evidence presented. And on the other hand, the National Prosecution Service, of which the Department of Justice is the lead agency in respect to that, they perform their task independently, and they just have to perform their duties and responsibilities to the best of their abilities, and we will abide by whatever decision that the courts may render in respect to the cases that are pending before them. She emphasized the delay, I think 4 years in that case of that lady in Tacloban, but The matter of her release is one that is subject of the requirements of our present laws, because I understand, and we have to verify this, I understand that her case is non-bailable. So we have to follow the judicial procedures, and sooner the matter would be decided by the court.
Briefly add, no, because I was with Ms. Khan when she went to Tacloban. Ano. Now, the issue of delay, maybe it would be good for you to be informed that the prosecution has already arrested this case as far back as November 2023. No, insofar as the illegal possession for firearms and explosive case is concerned. And this is the principal case why she remains in jail. No, the prosecution has arrested this case last November. Unfortunately, the defense counsels of the accused, Ms. May Cumpio in particular, had asked the court to defer all their scheduled hearings in the first 2 months of this year, and so the court granted the motion for the hearings to commence at the beginning of the month of March. In other words, the delay cannot be attributed to the prosecution or to the government, but maybe at this point she should question her own defense counsel. That's all that I gather. Pinakancel nung mga abogado niya yung mga hearing for January and February. The court record, I'm sure, will bear this out.
Next question, please. No other question? Okay. Yes, the lady in blue, please identify yourself.
Hi, I'm Jean Mangales from Inquirer.net. So we just received news that Ms. Irene Can actually recommended the abolition of the NTF-LCAC. Would you care to comment on this?
Well, if she recommended the abolition of the NTF-LCAC, and you mentioned this in a press conference, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then we considered it as a preliminary recommendation because, as discussed, the final recommendation will come months after. And she, in fact, requested for documents, no, and other materials that can be used to complete her recommendations. But during the meeting, when we discussed the status of the NTF-LCAC, we assured her that we were open for reform, no? And we assured her that given the new tone of the current administration, there is opportunity here for transformation. And as I mentioned, given the two supervening events, the strategic victory over the New People's Army and the exploratory peace talks with the CPP, NP, and DF, it would not be proper at this time to abolish the National Task Force LCAC. The National Task Force LCAC has been the game changer in our government's fight against communist terrorism. Please take note that this is a 52-year-old running insurgency. Hindi pa po pinapanganak karamihan sa atin dito. Nandito na yan. And now that we have reached this stage in the campaign, we feel it's improper to call for its abolition. And it would be best, if necessary, to undertake the transition, you know, because now that we're winning, what signal does it send to the public and to the international community that the Philippines, after 40,000 deaths attributed to the communist insurgency, after trillions of dollars and pesos impact on the Philippine economy, they are now calling for the abolition of the NTF-LCAC. No? So we relay that to her, and we hope that she will consider all of these recommendations of the Philippine government once she completes her report.
Any other member of the panel would like to add to that? Lisa? Yes, Lisa.
We also emphasized during the informal discussion this morning that the creation of the LCAC and the game changer effects of its operations, and we're at the cups of success in respect to that, because once insurgency in the Philippines is ended, then we are hopeful, we in the government are hopeful that this time economic development and social upliftment will follow. So we stressed that actually LCAC was a creation of the government as an act of defense in its exercise of its sovereign powers and rights. And we mentioned to her that the right to sovereignty is actually the cornerstone and foundation of the United Nations Charter, and she acceded to that proposition. So we will try to defend, protect, and promote individual human rights. The rights of society, the rights of the family, the rights of the community should also be considered vis-a-vis the individual rights. That is the distinct difference between how the Western world treats human rights and how we in the Philippines treat it. As you will know, the primacy and the importance of the family as a social institution and the community in general are the paramount considerations in our Philippine society.
Thank you, Yusek Vasquez. JP,
Yes, just going back to the things that was raised by Ms. Khan, did she raise existing laws and criminal liability for libel cases filed against journalists that may potentially interfere with, in-depth investigative type of reporting? Was there any mention of that?
Well, actually, what she proposed is that for the Philippines to consider decriminalizing libel and cyber libel. She mentioned that it harks back, shall we say, to the colonial era. But of course, that the actual decriminalization of libel and cyber libel belongs to our legislative body. And I believe that during her discussion with our lawmakers yesterday or the other day, she was informed that there are already several pending bills in Congress pointing towards that direction.
Okay, thank you.
And we also stress that since the present policy of government is to criminalize libel or cyber libel for that matter, we in the executive department have no choice but to enforce the law. But once there is a change in the policy as mandated by the enactment of laws on the matter, we are ready, willing, and able to implement and enforce the laws with the same vigor and enthusiasm as we are doing with respect to the existing laws. But let me tell you this. In the present leadership of the Department of Justice, there are many reforms that have been undertaken, and one of which would soon be the general norm, increasing the degree of proof in respect to the filing of cases to ensure that there wouldn't be any weaponization of penal laws, there wouldn't be no harassment suits, and that there would just be the filing of quality cases. We have also ensured that there be a closer cooperation between the prosecution and the law enforcement under our Department Circular 20. And these are meant to ensure that only cases that are supported by sufficient evidence, the witnesses are there, documents are there, real evidence are available, and so on and so forth, would be submitted for the court's resolution. And with this and other reforms and changes that have been undertaken, the administration of justice would be far better served, and the 5 pillars of the justice system would greatly benefit, because law enforcement would now have more time, lesser cases to handle. more time to focus on the bigger and more meaningful cases. Similarly, the prosecutors would have lesser things to prosecute, and the court dockets would be lowered. The number of persons deprived of liberty who may be sent to our correction system would be lesser. And most importantly, which is the flip side, these reforms are meant to ensure that there wouldn't be no innocent persons who would be unduly charged in court, or they would be unjustly be incarcerated in jail.
Vasquez, Michaela, GMA Online.
Want to know if the issue of cybercrime was also raised, and what were her concerns, and what is the response of the Philippine government?
It was described in passing, not in detail, and it was just as mentioned by Yusek Paul. That is a policy issue, and there are pending bills right now that may lead to its decriminalization. It may soon, if approved and enacted into law, libel, as we know it, would just be a civil defamation case. It would just lead to claims for damages against that could be lodged by the aggrieved person.
Any more questions? Cecile, you raised your hand earlier. Yeah.
Over the past a few months, as you said, the new government has welcomed 3 UN rapporteurs. In the previous government, there was a rapporteur who was banned by the previous leader. I was wondering if the new government will welcome her visit now, Ms. Agnes Calamar, or has she been invited, or has she invited herself to visit and talk to this new government?
Thank you so much for that question. Earlier we were talking about ghosts from the past, and I think that's also one of the ghosts now. I was directly involved in the preparation for that supposed visit from Agnes Calamar. At the time, there was already an intensive preparation to let her come in. As you know, the dynamics of which is this: a special rapporteur who has an interest in coming to the country would issue through the permanent mission a request that she be invited. So after we were able to vet that, we actually invited her, but the invitation has to go through many processes, like establishing the terms of reference, etc., etc. So let's just clarify it, that at the very start, we were open to her visit. Now, I need to point this out, because in our many engagements with special rapporteurs, they appealed to us to kindly explain before your media the real story. And this is the real story. We were preparing for her visit. That was in 2017. We were in fact in Geneva for the Universal Periodic Review. And at the same time, on the side of that review, was supposed to be negotiations for her coming in. But when we went there, we found out that she was already here. She was doing the rounds of media, of institutions. And that pissed off the administration, because we were very open in allowing her to come in, and there she was violating the methods of work. Now, the special rapporteurs appealed to us that let it not be a representation of the earnestness and openness of special rapporteurs to engage with the country. So she is veritably an exception to the rule. And over time, we were able to engage, because even on the side of Human Rights Council sessions, we continued to engage special rapporteurs, because we value their competence, their expertise, and we are very earnest in moving forward our own human rights agenda. And we need a third-party assessment of how we are doing. And that is why, unbeknownst to many, perhaps to you, since the time that we did not allow any special rapporteur on the side of Human Rights Council sessions, and up to now, we've already been able to engage with almost more than 40 special rapporteurs, and we were able to engage and discuss mutually beneficial issues on advancing human rights. So, given that, we are moving forward to a new chapter in dealing with special rapporteurs. And while I'm at it, I'm sorry if I need to segue a bit now. Let me also put this in context. Perhaps we might be looking at recommendations already with a certain level of finality. Let it not be the case. You know, special rapporteurs come in with a resolution to settle issues on the ground, thinking, perhaps, coming from reports of NGOs and CSOs, that the government does not listen to them. Special rapporteurs offer bridges of communication, and that is what she does, and that is what she did. No? There are certain groups that are saying, now, oh, we have this problem in the country, we want you to listen to us. The good thing about this is that the initial recommendations coming from her are those that have been conveyed by only a number of groups. Now, this is the upside of it all. When the special rapporteur comes out with a recommendation, that comes with a commitment from the Philippine government to vet that same recommendations with more civil society organizations that were not heard during her discussions. And that's the reason why she wanted even an extended period to review. Because for us, the playing field is so vast. And in fact, she even mentioned that we had more than 60,000 cause-oriented organizations in the country. And she has only perhaps talked to probably a handful. And what about all the rest? So that is really part of the human rights track that we've always respected. But then again, this needs to be further clarified because that is how we engage with the UN. The UN has this objective to really establish a platform wherein that vast civic space can allow more players on human rights to come in. And that is the good thing about this because many, and I noted one issue coming from one article coming from the Philippine Star, I think there was a letter from somebody from Baguio saying, how come they were talking to us? We are also here, talk to us, and I hope she can listen. And that is what we intend to do. We welcome those recommendations. By the way, we have a national recommendations tracking database that is handled by my office, and we will farm out all these recommendations, and we will ensure that they are monitored. But the monitoring comes with vetting, with consultations, because others also need to be heard. Others need to be heard. No, it's not just a monopoly of a number of NGOs that are the usual, the usual ones in the field. We open the ground for more players. So, and that is the value of the visit of the special rapporteur. Thank you.
Secretary Asek, you'd like to.
I would just like to update some of the information that we have on the SR. SR Agnes Calamard ended her term in June 2022. She was replaced by Mr. Morris Tidball-Bins, who is now the current Special Rapporteur on extrajudicial killings. And in fact, soon after the assumption of SR Tidball-Bins, he had a meeting with the Secretary of Justice in Geneva. And on the invitation of the Secretary of Justice, Mr. Tidball-Bins visited the Philippines last year. And there were extensive activities for him, a program that allowed him to share his expertise. And in fact, this led to some recommendations related to the improvement of investigative capacities in the Philippines. He is advocating for Minnesota Protocol, the implementation of the Minnesota Protocol. He's an expert. And as a result of these discussions, including particular recommendations that arose out of those engagements with the DOJ and our law enforcement authorities, the Philippines pledged to establish a forensic institute soon. And I believe that Yusek Vasquez can tell us more about how fruitful and constructive an engagement with the SR can be with the right personality. And I think we've proven the willingness, the openness of the Philippines to engage with this example of our engagement with the successor of Agnes Calamard.
Thank you. Actually, I was with the good secretary when he invited Special Rapporteur Dr. Morris Tidbaldins to visit the country. And the visit was for a specific purpose. And it was an academic visit in order to capacitate and to improve the forensic science capacity of our doctors. The country has only two world-recognized forensic experts, one of whom is Dr. Raquel Fortun, and another is Dr. Alim, her student. The idea was to ensure that there will be greater pool of experts that would assist in the criminal investigation and prosecution of crimes. And this is also in relation to our department circular that we issued that now requires the automatic autopsy of cases involving suspicious deaths or deaths of children. With the visit of Dr. Morris Tidbaldins, there were about 70 participants during his 1 week intensive seminar, and he brought in experts from various areas, particularly the experts from University of Monash in Australia. And one good takeaway out of that visit was his suggestion that the Philippines would take the lead in respect to the South and South discussion to make forensic science as the cornerstone of all criminal prosecutions and investigation in the world. Dr. Morris Tidbaldins is from Argentina, and he being from a southern country like we do, that was the idea, to ensure that the UN will now take cognizance of a South and South dialogue to establish and support more forensic science discussion seminars, and probably that institute as mentioned by Asek Isa earlier. That is one of the suggestions, the pledges that we made when the executive secretary went to the United Nations during the 75th anniversary of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, and I was with him, and that was one of the pledges, really, to make sure that these things would be done sooner.
Thank you, Yusek Vasquez. We have time for one last question. JP raised his hand earlier, but okay, JP or Zen?
Yes, sir. I'm not sure if this was mentioned earlier, but did Ms. Can give her opinions, or has she made inquiries on the case of Percy Lapid, and what was another provincial journalist that was killed last year, and what was what was your response to that, if she did mention it?
Ma'am, can I just quickly go back a little to the recommended abolition of the NTF-LCAC? Since if we are transitioning and we have declared initial victory and shifting goals to economic development, I'm just wondering if the current government structure is not enough to actually deliver that. I'm looking at the purpose still of the task force at this point, if we are at this stage already.
Fighting the communist insurgency is a complex process. It is not simply about clearing barangays and arresting the armed regulars of the New People's Army. It's also about bringing development to these areas, because the reason why the NTF-LCAC has been very successful since its foundation in 2018 was it began a whole-of-government approach. Once the barangays are cleared, the local government units, the DILG, conducts the RCSP program, which then determines the problems of the community. And then through the barangay development program, we are able to bring development to these areas. The bringing of development is the one that insulates the community from further communist influence. So it would be irresponsible for the NTF-LCAC to be abolished right now, because we have not yet achieved total victory. Okay, as I mentioned, there are 11 weekend guerrilla fronts all over the country. There are 1,500 armed regulars, and they are still there. So the abolition or the transition should come at the proper time. No? The proper time, as I mentioned, would be when all of these 11 guerrilla fronts have been dismantled and or a political settlement has been signed with the CPP, NP, and DF. Hopefully this will happen very soon so that we can now focus all of our energies from internal security issues and focus on territorial integrity, because that is the call of the times. So the ability of government to focus on territorial defense and territorial integrity will depend upon the success of our country in finally quelling internal security problems. We have been very successful in Mindanao in working on Muslim secessionism through the normalization track of the Bangsamoro government. There is a functioning government there now under the BARM. Things have also improved in terms of security. Our major internal security problem remains to be the CPP, NP, and DF. Once we have cleared this issue, and we hope to declare them very soon, we can now focus all of our efforts on territorial defense.
Thank you very much. That concludes our press conference today.
May
Oh,
I just,
yes.
Yeah, may I just, na-mention kasi yung barn, no? May I just also inform you that I also extended to Ms. Khan the standing invitation of BARM Chief Minister Ibrahim for her to also visit BARM and see it for herself what is happening down there in terms of development and also the diversity of opinion being promoted in BARM, no? As your task force, we are also proceeding with continuing with our media summits to assist our fellow journalists. And one of our target areas where we have already a tentative agreement is the BARM region. And Chief Minister Ibrahim, when we talked together last November, agreed that if Ms. Khan at the time, she is invited there to visit also BARM, maybe as the way what happened to the DOJ visit as an academic visit after the Ramadan period.
Any more would like to have some concluding comments? None? Okay.